Jake Stuart back with the National Sports Media Association, and today I am joined by Mississippi Sportscaster of the Year, Noah Newman. Noah, thank you so much for coming today.
Yeah, Jake, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. I know you've spent a lot of time as a sports news guy. I want to ask you first off, what brought you into the industry? What made you want to cover sports?
Well, it's actually something I've always wanted to do since I was a little kid. I remember going to baseball games with my dad, Jacobs Field in Cleveland, Ohio. It's now Progressive Field, but back in the day it was Jacobs Field. And I remember just sitting in the stands and acting like I was calling a game on a radio. People around us couldn't believe it. They're like, who is this crazy little kid? But I've just always been drawn to it, listening to radio play-by-play guys, TV play-by-play guys, watching all the sports anchors growing up. It's just, I was lucky enough to do something that I was kind of always passionate about. So went to the University of Dayton and learned from some great people there, fine-tuned my skills, and kind of set me up for some success down the road.
So I know you mentioned you're a Cleveland native. You went to the University of Dayton. What made you switch to Mississippi? I mean, the two are just so different.
Yeah, it was a big change for me. I mean, I went from Ohio to Illinois, which was where my first couple professional broadcasting jobs were, to Mississippi, and it's really all about connections. So our news director, Ty Takahashi, who worked at the station in Jackson, Mississippi, gave me a call one day and was like, hey, we have an opening down here. Would you like to interview it? See if you'd be a good match. And I interviewed and was lucky enough to get the job. Connections are so important in this business, and you want to feel comfortable with who you're working with. And there's a big level of trust there. And also, I mean, what an incredible opportunity. I think Mississippi is the most underrated sports state in America. I mean, we were covering Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Southern Miss, Alcorn State, Jackson State. There's so many different colleges you cover. And also high school sports are big down there. High school football Friday night in Mississippi. I don't know if you've ever experienced anything like it. It's pretty cool.
I sure bet. That was my next question, was about the college sports life there. I know it's not only a big transition from the pro teams in Ohio and Cleveland, but definitely a lot of college there. I want to ask you, so this is your first award from the National Sports Media Association. What does this mean to you, Noah?
It means everything. I'd say it's probably the biggest accomplishment I've had since working in broadcasting. And I was blown away when I was informed that I won the award, because there are so many great broadcasters in Mississippi, and it's such a prestige. So really blown away by it. At first I was thinking, wait, is this, did they get the right guy? Maybe it was a misprint. Maybe I didn't win it, but it's just a big time honor. It's hard to really put into words what it means, but it is kind of a validation of the hard work we did at the station, covering College World Series, SEC football, high school sports, so many big stories over the past few years in Mississippi, that the stories kind of write themselves in Mississippi. So I was lucky in that regard to work with a great team and just have so many great opportunities for sports stories. And just a big time honor. I was blown away.
Well, speaking of great broadcasters, you've obviously etched your name there. I'm curious though, who were some of the broadcasters you looked up to growing up, maybe some mentors? And I know you mentioned Cleveland, obviously Mississippi. There's some big names in both places, but who would you grow up looking up to?
Yeah, that's a great question. There are a lot. I followed a lot of the anchors on Sports Center, from Rich Eisen to Dan Stewart. Dan Patrick, though, is one of the biggest guys I looked up to, and always thought, man, that guy is great at what he does. So I kind of studied his techniques, and he went to the University of Dayton, which that was kind of a motivating factor when I was looking at schools. The fact that Dan Patrick went to Dayton was definitely a motivator to choose Dayton. But I still listen to his radio show all the time. And other than that, just the local broadcasters that I grew up listening to, Tom Hamilton, who calls the Indians or now the Guardians games, Jim Donovan, who calls the Browns games, Joe Tate, rest in peace. He was a great Cavaliers play-by-play guy. So really just my advice to some young broadcasters out there is, follow the national guys, but take a look at the local guys who are working in the market you're growing up in, because they could teach you a lot. And I would say those are some of the big people I looked up to.
And Noah, can you tell us about maybe a game or a story that you were able to cover that really stands out to you? Maybe one of your favorites over your time so far?
Oh, there have been so many, especially here in Mississippi. No doubt when Deion Sanders was introduced as a head football coach at Jackson State, that was definitely something I'll never forget, covering that. You see him on TV and he's so charismatic. I guarantee you in person, he's even more larger than life. I mean, just what an presence. a guy you grow up watching on TV your whole life, and then boom, you're sitting in the same room as him, asking him questions about the football team. So covering Coach Prime is definitely up there. And then no doubt Mississippi State winning the College World Series title. That, as a championship starved Cleveland sports fan, I really related to that fan base because, believe it or not, all the great teams and athletes I've had come through there at Mississippi State, they've never won a national title.
Wow.
So to be there in Omaha and cover their first national championship, winning the College Baseball World Series over Vanderbilt in 3 games, that was definitely number one, atop my list, number one experience as a.
That's hard to beat. That's really awesome.
Yeah.
It's really hard to beat. And I'm curious too, especially from a news perspective, how much did COVID-19 impact your work? Were you able to still be in the newsroom, or was it transitioning to doing a lot from home? What was your kind of take on that?
Yeah, that was, wow. It changed a lot, really. One small thing was we had an internship program. We had an intern named Thomas who worked with us, and we were becoming really close, teaching him the business. And all of a sudden, the internship program gets shut down. So you have to break the news to him that I'm sorry, we can't, have you in anymore. So just things like that really changed. But as far as the day-to-day, you had to really think outside the box more to get your stories. The press conference, we went a couple of years without ever having an in-person press conference. So Zoom, I think, was one big positive to come out of the pandemic, is you communicate with people all over the country now. So that was one good thing. But yeah, luckily we were able to stay in the newsroom because there were only 2 to 3 of us in the sports department. So we were able to, distance each other enough that one of us could be in the newsroom at a time. And I know a lot of people across the country, I think it varied state to state and station to station, but a lot of people were doing their newscast and sportscast at home in their bedroom or their kitchen, but never came to that with us. It was just, it forced you to think more outside of the box in terms of how to get your stories. I'll give you an example. So in Omaha, when you cover the College World Series, in a normal year, you probably go to practice and get interviews with players and coaches. Well, there was no access this year. You couldn't go to a practice. You had the Zoom post-game press conferences, but you couldn't really do anything in person with the coaches or players. So we really had to think outside the box, and we did stories with the play-by-play guy. We did stories with fans who traveled across the country to be at the game. So really, it was a blessing in disguise because it forced you to be a little more creative with the stories you pursued.
Well, you touched on this a little bit earlier. This is the last question I'll ask, and thanks again for your time, Noah. But you touched on this a little bit earlier about advice you had for younger sportscasters. One such being, look into smaller markets because of the value it provides in kind of the hidden sports market within Mississippi. What other advice do you have for maybe people just getting into industry, especially at just such a crazy time like today?
Yeah, I would say do as much as you can in terms of internships or job shadowing. If you're in college, I would say, hey, your first year there, definitely get involved in the university's radio and TV stations. And, don't be afraid to write an email to the local sports anchor or any of the local news people in your market, because that's one great thing about the industry is people really, everyone has been in that position where they needed help coming up through the business. So I think they enjoy getting to mentor other people and kind of give back and share that advice. So I would definitely say, don't be scared to reach out to people that you might look up to or you think you could possibly do an internship with. And then when you get that internship, try to be, it might be uncomfortable at first, but try to be as aggressive as possible in terms of maybe asking the reporter you're shadowing if you could record a stand-up. Just try to do as many on-hands type things that you can when you're doing that internship. And I would say that just try to get as much experience as possible when you're in school.
Well, hey, Noah, thank you so much for coming, our 2021 Mississippi Sportscaster of the Year. Hopefully we see you out in Winston this summer for our awards conference.
All right, Jake, this is a lot of fun. I really appreciate it. Thank you.